And welcome to the Comic Corner. My name is Damon. I'm your host. What we do here is comic book news, reviews, and interviews. And today I have the one, the only Mark Waid, who has done. If I kept saying everything you've done, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man, if I kept going on, I'd literally just run out of time.
That's all
Mark,
the time. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Mark, thank you so much for
Sure.
taking the time.
You bet.
I gotta ask. So usually, what I was gonna say, like usually, what I start is like, "Oh, what's your comic book origin story?" You've told that
A million times.
a
Thank you for
million
not asking me
times.
that. Yes. I'm tired of being chatty Cathy, where they just pull the string in the back and I'll give you my pat answer to how I broke into comics, right?
But I will ask you this:
Yeah.
I saw you at Terrificon right here in Connecticut.
Yep.
I did the whole Daredevil, I'm
That
not
was great.
Daredevil
Yep.
cosplay. I gotta ask, as a writer,
Yeah.
when you see fans come up to you like this, when I go
Yeah.
all out like this, or anyone else, what does that mean to you?
It's the best. It means a lot because we all want to feel like even though they're not our toys that we're playing with as writers, that they belong to corporate IP, you still want to believe that you're able to do something with the character in your time sort of looking after that character that has legs, right? That has permanence, that adds something to the legend or something that resonates beyond your own work. So it's so cool. Whether it's that or whether it's hearing somebody talk about the Speed Force on my TV screen, or whether it's, you know, Superman in a movie saying the S stands for hope or whatever, any of those things, it just kind of makes me feel like, all right, that's an extra added bonus. I was able to do something more than just write six scripts and go away.
And of course, I mean, that panel in particular, everyone knows it, everyone loves it. I highly recommend for anyone who also just hasn't read that issue to go read the issue because it is a heart wrenching issue. But it does have some great moments like that one with Matt coming out with the big candy cane. I didn't have the big candy cane that day. I lost it
That's
actually.
okay.
It got bent out of proportion. But I want to go straight into it because we have quite a few books of yours
Okay.
that I want to talk about.
You
And
bet.
that includes one that
Yeah.
just kind of ended.
Yeah.
Absolute Power, which was I've gone on several podcasts to talk about this book, and we've talked about this book every single week and month that all this and the tie-ins came out. This is single-handedly, like almost universally said as of recently, one of the best events that has been put out in the comic book industry in quite some time. It was grand scale, but also just like heartfelt. It felt
Yeah.
like everything had impact, and not just that, but also so many of previous events felt like they were not and paid off in
Right.
here, which
Right.
was just it was beautifully done. I was a big fan of
Thank
the
you.
Dawn of D. It felt like a good conclusion to the Dawn of DC era, which
That
I
was
like
that
again.
was a part of that was part of the remit.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. Something that kind of wrapped it all up
yeah.
in a nice bow, and then we move on to the
Mhm.
all end era. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just so
Thank
well
you.
done. Did you go to DC to about this pitch, or did they come to you? And how did this whole thing play out?
They came they came to several people. I think I was like
Okay.
the fourth or fifth in a row who tried to crack that nut and couldn't figure out a way to crack it. It wasn't,
Mhm.
it was just, we need an event. We need something, we need to pay off Amanda Waller and all she's been doing over the last couple of years. We need something big. We'd like to launch the Justice League out of it. Go. And, you know, Chip Zdarsky would work on it for 4 weeks and then call up crying and say, I can't do it. Whatever. And luckily, I just, I was in the right place at the right time. They asked me. They said it's a suicide run. You want to do it? I said I'm willing to give it a shot because Dan Mora. First off, I mean, I'm not going to not work with Dan Mora.
Mhm.
It'll look good if nothing else. And then beyond that, once I had a couple of pieces in my mind about the Amazos, about the power sapping, about using failsafe, Brainiac Queen, or whoever, it started to come together. And then building it became as much about character work as it did about the the mechanism of the plot, because so many events, and this, I mean, so many events are so plot heavy that
Mhm.
they either collapse under their own weight, or they don't jibe with other tie-in books, or whatever, they just become too ponderous. But I just wanted a simple through line. This is it. Amanda Waller won. What do we do now? And it's a pretty straightforward plot, those 4 issues.
Mhm.
And that made the tie-ins much easier to work with. Everybody was very gracious. Josh Williamson was very gracious about giving up Superman for 3 months and surrendering that book to the crossover. Same with Chip and Batman. Same with Tom King and Wonder Woman. Because I said, if we're going to do tie-ins, I don't want it to be tie-ins of C-list books because that makes it seem unimportant. If you're going to do tie-ins, they've got to be the main Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman titles so that it has some oomph to it, right? That it has some
Mhm.
heft to it. So it was all character stuff. It was always when I was looking at every scene and every moment, it was how do I make sure that everyone has a unique line of dialogue that is specific to their character rather than lots of
Mhm.
this way, Hawkman, right behind you, Green Arrow. I try to work harder than that and then come up with the character bits, the stuff with John, the stuff with Airwave, the stuff with Nightwing, the stuff. I think one of my proudest moments was Big Barda and Nightwing arguing about how far you can go
Yeah.
against an enemy, and because I've never seen the two of them have a conversation before, so
Yeah.
that's that is what intrigues me. Like give me any six DC characters, and I can put them together in different combinations that we've never seen before, and I can give you conversations we've never heard.
Mm. Nightwing is my all-time favorite DC character. Dick
He's
Grayson
one of mine too.
is
He's certainly in my top 3 or 4.
yeah, it's I've always looked at him and I've seen him not just as like, the son of Bruce and even the son or grandson, however you want to look at it, of Alfred, but he is the product of both Batman and Superman.
Exactly.
He is the best of both, which is why I loved this entire event and how the Dawn of DC really put him on a pedestal. And I'm like, yeah, there we go. We
Yeah.
did it. And it was great. One of the characters I really got their time to shine in this whole event was Dreamer.
Yes.
And I love that because Nicole Maines, who we all know really like brought this character to life.
Mhm.
I know she had like some sort of writing credit in here. How
Yeah,
much did she?
she's done a
Yeah,
couple of short stories with Dreamer on her own already. One of them
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
published last year in a Superman special,
Mhm.
and she did some for the Suicide Squad
Yep.
tie-ins. And she was just very helpful. I mean, she has a feel for that character that nobody else does because she helped create that character.
Mhm.
And the last thing in the world I would ever do with someone like that is try to tell them how their character would react or what their character would do. It was mostly just sitting back and letting Nicole explain to me what Dreamer would do in this situation or that situation, or how she would use her powers here or there, and let her take the reins.
Mm. One of the last things about this event that I also really loved is even if for those who like, we all know budgetary things are a thing with comics. So if you're just reading the mainline series, you did a phenomenal job to explain what was going on in the other
Thank you.
books
Thank you.
because, maybe not myself, but some other people who may just be reading this main line,
Mhm.
you can understand, oh, that's what Batman's doing. He has a mother box now, but we
Yeah.
mentioned that before. That was his whole plan. Oh, we know what Wonder Woman was doing over here with like the magic use, all this other stuff, right?
Yeah. I'm
So
very
hats
mindful
off to
about
you
that.
on that.
Yeah, thank you. It's something I'm very mindful about is I don't it's a fine line, right? You
Hmm.
don't want to tell people, "Oh, you don't have to read any of the tie-ins," because then they won't and you're not selling as many copies. At the same time, you don't want to tell everybody, "Oh, you've got to read everything," because they probably don't and then you're just taking their money. So it's a fine line, but I really wanted to do something where, like you said, if you just read these Forces of Absolute Power, you get a complete story. If you read the tie-ins, you get some awesome, cool side stuff that sort of helps flesh out the story. But you get a straight up story here. I think it's irresponsible to expect fans to have to spend $150 to get one story.
No, I absolutely agree. And also, we've mentioned it before. Shout out Dan Mora. Incredible,
Best. He's
incredible
just
art.
incredible. And he loves to draw characters he's never drawn before. He's George Perez in that sense. He just wants to draw
Mhm.
everybody. So perfect. He's perfect for this.
Mm. Love that. Absolutely love that. Love this event. Can't wait for anyone who hasn't checked it out. For whatever reason, when this comes out in trade, when it comes out as a collection, go do it because this was one of the best events in comics
Thank you.
in quite some time. So go do that. And of course, we have Mark Waid here. So I'm going to talk about Superman. We have to talk
Sure.
about Superman. We got a big Superman behind him. And if you do go to the comic shop like I do, like a lot of us do every single week, you will see that there's a new Action Comics out every single week with your name on it.
Yep.
And this story is super fun. We're
Thank you.
going deep into like some questions that like it's like, yeah, whatever.
Some real
Like,
ethical and yeah, some real
yeah,
fundamental ethical and moral questions about Superman. Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, the idea was, and it's yes, 12 issues, 12 weekly issues. The
Hmm.
sixth one just came out yesterday or today.
Hmm.
So we're halfway through. But I have been bothered for a while that the Phantom Zone has when it was first created, it was the Phantom Zone, emphasis on Phantom, right?
Hmm.
Basically, people just in ghostly states, not being able to interact with each other, having no tangible world they live in. That's pretty horrific to begin with. But over the last 5 or 6 years or so, maybe a little longer, we've gradually turned the Phantom Zone into a complete hellscape.
Hmm.
With matter and land and people being able to, people no longer being phantoms, and it's just hell.
Hmm.
It is the worst possible place you could send people, and I couldn't reconcile Superman doing that. I couldn't reconcile my concept of Superman with somebody who would deliberately send people there or would let people be there if he knew how bad it was. So issue one is really the Superman finding out how bad it really is in there and making a point of, okay, I have to go fix the Phantom Zone because I don't get to pick and choose who I help. I don't get to pick and
Hmm.
choose who I save. And even though it's full of a bunch of criminals who hate me, they don't deserve unending torture.
Hmm.
And more than that, it's also, geez, my father thought this was a good idea. How do I deal with that? How do I cope with that? That it's not, was he really that cold? Was he really that uncaring? Did he
Hmm.
not understand what he was unleashing when he created the Phantom Zone? And to be able to dive into that question and have a satisfactory answer has been one of the joys of writing the story.
No, absolutely. And of course, it's not just like the villains, everything. We have the whole Mon El aspect as
Yeah.
well, which is like a tragic friend aspect in there that brings a little extra love to it. But I talked to Philip Kenny Johnson yesterday. We interviewed him and
Yeah.
we talked all about, he brought up the Warworld saga, which is
Hmm.
honestly
Great.
the action comic story that brought me back into action. I'm like, this has been fantastic. It was
Yeah.
a monthly grab. I had
Monthly.
to pick it
Yeah. And it
up,
was really
and
good. Yeah.
it was excellent. And he brought up one of his favorite lines in there was when he's sitting in the prison after being beaten, and Midnighter's trying to take him out, and they're going back and forth. And he's looking at me. He's like, "You want me to just give up on them because they booed me?
Hmm.
That's not who
Right.
Superman is,
No.
you know."
No.
And it's stories like that are the ones that really just they made me fall in love with Superman like all over again.
Yeah. Very few people would blame Superman if he just let the Phantom Zone go on as it was because it's full of the
Mhm.
worst people in the galaxy. But as Superman says, he doesn't get a choice.
Mhm.
He cannot, if people are suffering beyond anything they deserve, then they have to be helped.
Yep. It's, people wouldn't blame him, but Superman would blame
Yeah,
himself,
exactly. Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
And he would. So he's going completely out of his way,
Hmm.
potentially, at some points, like losing his powers or being in there too long because there is no sun.
Right.
And it's a great story. And
Thank
what I
you.
love about Action is the fact that it is an anthology. So you get like this, and then you have the Supergirl story right behind it, and both aspects almost just kind of like they battle with each other a little bit, but they also complement each other by
Yeah.
going out of your way, or not even going out of your way, but just you doing the right thing no matter who you're trying to help.
Right. And I gotta give props to Clayton Henry, the artist who's doing the
Mhm.
bulk of the work here,
Mhm.
and Michael Shelver, who's doing the subplot stuff with Connor and Super Bowl Connor and Keenan rather, and they're really bringing the heat. I mean, it really it's a good looking book.
Mm. It is. It absolutely is. All pun intended for absolute DC, but it's great. and I can go on and on with you about everything Superman. I gotta ask, I'm not gonna get you in trouble. That's not
Yeah.
my intention. I'm
No.
not trying to pry or anything. However, we do know there's a big Superman movie coming out next year,
Yeah.
and you went on a very big retreat with a lot of other Superman writers.
No, I did
Oh,
not,
you did not.
because I was on my way to a convention
Oh,
overseas, and I
okay.
couldn't and I couldn't make it, which
Oh,
broke my heart. I'm looking at all
no.
these pictures of all these other
Oh,
freelancers,
no.
all of whom apparently got there, and their first question was, "Where is Mark? He should be here."
Oh,
And I was just like the kid on snow
yeah.
day with the
Oh,
cold, with a strep throat,
no.
looking at all the people playing out in the snow. Wait, it gets worse.
Oh,
So
no.
then, a few weeks later, I get the call from Marvel. We want to
Yeah.
fly you out to the Fantastic Four set.
Okay.
Same thing. I'm on my way to a convention. I can't duck
Oh,
out. I can't.
no.
I've already promised people I'd be at the show. I got to go. So I'm the only one who missed both of them.
Oh,
Um,
no.
But I will say this though, to kind of circle back to what I
Yeah, yeah,
anticipate your question was,
yeah,
I don't really know anything, but what I do know is that people I trust who were there on the Superman set
yeah,
are very happy, and think that I will be very happy, and say
yeah.
it's they can't say anything, they can't give too much away, and I don't want them to really. I want to be surprised, but it the message I got from those who did attend is it's in good hands.
So my actual question, because I don't wanna
Yeah,
pry,
yeah,
and it's more of for a lot of people, this will be, in my opinion, their
yeah.
first real introduction to Superman in quite some time.
And
Their
yes.
first introduction to Clark Kent.
Mhm.
What are you most excited about for those who may just be like the movie fans, to
Right.
see Superman on a big screen? Like, what are you most excited for them to experience?
Joy. That's the thing I'm most excited for them to experience, is joy and hope,
Mhm,
and sunlight,
mhm,
and the understanding that Superman doesn't kill his enemies.
mhm,
He doesn't kill people. That's rule number one. And he will always try to find a way to make things better. So I know that that is an undercurrent of the entire movie. And I cannot wait for people to get a taste of a Superman that they really love,
yeah,
who doesn't take the dark path.
mhm. I am so excited for this
Yeah, me too.
movie. I'm excited for look, I asked you at Terrificon, like, why do people want that Boy Scout Superman again? And you give phenomenal answer. We posted it right here on this channel. So if you want to go check out Mark's answer, absolutely go listen to it because it's a great answer. And look,
Thank
Boy
you.
Scout Superman's like my Superman. I know it's your
Yeah,
Superman. For a lot of people, it's everyone's Superman. To me, that is the Superman. So for a lot of people to possibly sit down and see that Superman for the first time is going to absolutely bring a tear of joy to my eye.
yes.
And I'm very excited for people to really sit down and take that all in.
Yeah.
Another book you've done, as we've talked about, a lot of books. Look, I had to talk about Daredevil. I got
Sure,
to
of
talk about
course.
Daredevil. Daredevil is a character who has had a very long line of great
A
runs.
murderer's row of
Mhm.
writers and artists over the last few decades. Yeah.
Yeah. When you took on this, you brought a much lighter tone in a lot of regards.
In a
What
lot of
were
regards, but not completely.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of regards. What were you like when you take on a character like Daredevil, like you said, as a
Mhm.
murderous row of just phenomenal runs? What were you hoping to bring?
Well, I was honest with my editor, who, when he called and
Mhm,
and asked me if I do the job, and I said, I don't think I can do it, because if what you want is a continuation of everything that has been going on in terms of
mhm,
tone for the last 20 years, first off, I'm competing with Frank Miller.
mm,
I'm not going to win that fight. I mean, why try to be a second? The best I could do is be a second rate Frank, if I'm
yeah,
going to try to write Daredevil like Frank Miller. And secondly, it's just not the kind of stuff I do well, and I'm not going to try to attack this book in a sense that, from the same continual sense that you have to have a drink after every issue, because it's so
mhm,
dark and brutal. And those are great comics. I mean, they really are. Bendis did a great job. Brubaker did a great job. No question about that. No reason in the world why comics like that can't exist. They totally should, but it's just not my wheelhouse. So I said, look, I appreciate what you're asking, but if you ask me to do this character, I need to have a little bit more fun with it. That's not quite the right word either. I need it to be a little more superhero-y.
Mm,
And the answer was, that's exactly what we're looking for right now. So terrific. Um, and look, I had Marcos Martin, I had Paulo Rivera, I had, then I had Chris Samney. I mean, I had some of the best artists working in comics working
mm,
on this with me. So if I'd taken on this book and it had been drawn by some wannabe C-lister or some brand new talent who, has not found his voice yet, no one would care. It lasted 6 issues and they would have canceled it and move on to another take on Daredevil.
mm. It was a great run, Mark. It was a
Thank you.
great run. It's one of my favorites. And look, I don't know if Daredevil's ever had a bad run. And thanks to you and thanks to many other writers and artists, um, that run continues. Like
It
that
certainly
streak
hasn't had a
continues.
bad it hasn't had a bad run since Frank, that's for sure, and that
Yeah.
was 40
Yeah.
years ago. It's not fun. There are moments of fun in this, but there's also some really, really dark
Yes.
moments. And it's people will sometimes look at Grisami's work and go, "Oh, it's not hyper realistic like Jim Lee, therefore it must be silly
Mhm.
and goofy." No, it's a lot of truly. What I like saying was the same amount of horrible things that Matt had to endure under previous writers. He had to endure those same that same level of of trauma under Me Too. The difference is in
Mhm.
how he dealt with it. The difference was just in how Matt dealt with his problems, not that he wasn't having really dark moments.
Mm. Absolutely. Great run. Great run, Mark.
Yes.
I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And a run I'm
You-
very
yeah,
excited for.
cool.
We should have planned this probably after the absolute power. Regardless,
That's right. Yeah.
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah.
Now, I've always said this show is for newer comic readers.
Hmm.
And we have had one of my favorite things I've done, and we still do, is we bring on like some of my closest friends who aren't big comic readers. Like, honestly, the only time they read comics, I'm like, read this. And
Thank
we
you.
sit down
Hmm.
and we go over some runs. So we did like Superman for all seasons, which is like a classic
Oh
Superman,
yeah.
a great introduction.
Mhm.
Tom Taylor's Nightwing being another.
Yep.
Justice League is a big, big thing.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah.
One of the characters in here that one of my co-hosts is not familiar with, so I'd love for you to introduce Star Sapphire.
Sure. She is she was Hal Jordan Green Lantern's girlfriend for the longest time.
Mm,
Their relationship goes back and forth, but she also has been granted a power ring of her own, but is not the green variety. In the DC universe, you've got different color power rings that mean different things, right? The green ring is about willpower. The orange one is about avarice. The red one is about anger, and she has the purple one, which is about healing, about love and healing, and not in a hippy dippy new age sense, but in a sense of her power comes from compassion. And I love that as a character. So that's what she brings the team, that sort of Green Lantern level of power, but less punching things with giant boxing gloves and more using it constructively in a proactive, positive manner. So she's great to work with. She's great to team up with Black Lightning, who's also in the book, because Black Lightning is a teacher by trade. He always has been. And his role in the Justice League Unlimited is to embrace some of the newer characters and some of the less experienced heroes and help them figure out what it is they're supposed to be doing with their powers. And Carol Ferris has been Star Sapphire for a while, but in the grand scheme of things, she is still, relatively speaking, to Superman and Batman, a tyro at this. So they have a really good relationship. And then the rest of the book is just an extension of what Dan and I were doing with World's Finest Comics, what I'm still doing with World's Finest Comics, which was, okay, just give me everything in the DC universe that I can play with. Let me play with everything and every character in the DC universe.
mm,
And with World's Finest, it's set a little bit in the past. It's still continuity, but it's set in the past. This is present day. So this is, okay, great. This is an even bigger canvas
mhm,
upon which to paint. And this is an even deeper bench of characters. The conceit of Justice League Unlimited is that if you are a superhero and you want to be a member of the Justice League, congratulations, you're a member of the Justice League. As long as you're willing to come when called, as long as you're willing to accept the responsibility of being a hero, then you are welcome on the team.
I was gonna ask about that because the big thing when like the DC All In book that kicked off this entire initiative is that we have the news station and everyone gets the Justice League card. Ironically enough, everyone is in,
Right.
everyone is all in on the Justice League. So I was gonna be like, are you think we'll have a little bit of maybe a little bit of a rotating cast, but
Yeah.
the main players on this book are the main players, and maybe if we need anyone, they'll kind of come in if needed.
Oh, definitely if we need it. I mean, there's three tiers basically. When I attack every issue, there's three tiers. There's wanting to use two or three or four of the core characters, the alpha team, which is the team you're seeing right now on the first issue.
Hmm.
Um, the usual suspects. There's also I want to be able to use a couple of characters that are not considered alpha level, not like your Batgirls, your Connor Hawks, your your Red Hoods, whatever, the characters that are strong characters but aren't like Trinity level characters. And then in every issue, I also want to introduce you to at least one really sort of deep cut superhero from the DC universe that you may not even have ever heard of before, and show you why I think they're cool and make them into something. Airwave was a good example of that. And Airwave
Yes.
has I think, to my editor's surprise, my editor's like, I never even heard of Airwave until he Absolute Power, and now I love him. And same with Dr. Occult shows up in issue 2. He is DC's first superhero. He was around since 1935, before Superman, and so he's a presence in the book as well. And nobody knows who Doctor Occult is at this point, but it's my job to reintroduce you to him and make you really think he's cool. And same with other guest stars I've got coming in and out.
To go back to Airwave, he had a great moment, obviously, in Absolute Power, and had some good conversations with Aquaman and with Nightwing. Great, like fantastic dialogue. But it all just goes to show that no matter like how like quote unquote lame you think your power is, it's so like you never know how important you can be
Right.
until you're needed, and then you're shown just
Mhm.
like look what you can do.
Right. And that's a part of Justice League too, because
Mhm.
the idea with a cast that big is that it's very mission oriented, right?
Mm.
Something's going on in the Amazon rainforest and it's big and it's giant robots or whatever. Okay, who's the best team to send at this moment? Who do we have available and whose powers are best suited for this trouble? Oh no, something else is happening in Asia. Great. Who's best for this job? And so it's a constant rotation of cast there and a constant rotation of plots and subplots. And it a lot of it really is, like you said, taking some of the B and C listers and proving to the readers and to the characters themselves that under the right circumstances, they can be as useful as anybody.
No, absolutely. And look, we mentioned his name earlier, and what a you couldn't have asked for a better artist for a
No,
book like this when you have a rotating ABC tier cast who are kind of coming in and out. Dan Mora,
he's killing
like,
it. He's killing it. Yeah. I'm so lucky to have him. Because again, he wants to draw everybody and everything.
yeah.
And he's just excited all the time about this book. And I don't know that I could have done it without him because he's just so good at storytelling and he's so good at finding a way to juggle all these characters without the book ever looking too crowded or too
Mhm.
dense. He's the best. He's so good.
So good. So this episode is coming out technically a week after we're recording. So this
Okay.
issue will be out next week.
Okay.
Go pick this up, everybody. Obviously, go support this book. But we have a new Justice League book out on
Mhm.
the shelves, an ongoing Justice League book in a brand new initiative. Go check it out because I am so excited for this
Thank you.
and the rotating cast. Of course, we have our big Trinity in here, but it's also everyone around them that really
Mhm.
builds out this team. And when everyone's all in, you should be too, because look, you never know who's going to show up in this book at this
Right.
point, and that's the exciting thing about it.
Oh,
I wanted to
oh,
bring this book up.
sure.
I,
Speaking of team books, yeah,
Speaking of team books, I wanted to bring this up. Champions, a classic for me because I
thank you.
love young teams. I'm a big
Me too.
Young Avengers fan, and I'm also a big Champions fan as well. And I don't know if you ever heard Iman Vellani, who's the actress who plays Ms. Marvel, always
Yeah,
goes back to this book in particular and
that's
why
great to hear.
this is kind of like her defining book for Ms. Marvel, alongside with G. Willow Wilson's
Right.
original as well. But
Yeah.
this story on the team and why she relates to Ms. Marvel and the team as a whole, it's almost like a millennial and Gen Z thing. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Uh, why do you think
Mm.
that is?
I mean, I think to give a little bit of background that might help explain is that
Yeah.
I had been tapped to do a new Avengers book, and my editor Tom Brevoort said, it's always good when you can put some brand new, younger point of view characters in the team. And so
Mm,
we brought Miles and Nova and Ms. Marvel together, put them on the team, and then we thought even more dramatic if they can't stand the fact that the Avengers, as good as they are not taking social responsibilities as seriously as they should. They're too worried about stopping giant robots and not worried enough about, okay, how do we make the world a better place? And so
mm,
they spin off and create their own book. They or create their own team. They recruit Vision, the daughter of the Vision. They recruit a few other
mhm,
heroes, and that we did that. We worked so hard to give them a voice that I wasn't trying to make them sound like kids because that's a thankless job. You will always
it's
sound
impossible to
tin-eared.
do. No matter,
Yeah,
yeah, no
right.
matter, yeah.
Right. So the bigger thing was, how do I make them sound genuinely interested in helping the world around them? Not punching supervillains, but what can they do to go around the world and help solve problems? And that was, that's the fun part of the book to me. It made the books pretty dark in some places. It made it I mean, the first issue is about child trafficking, for God's sake. It
Mhm,
gets off to a pretty dark start.
yeah.
But with Umberto Ramos drawing it, there's such energy and such vivacity to the art and to the characters that it sort of helped balance against the some of the real darker moments.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. And look, Gilberto Ramos, fantastic artist.
yeah,
I love his work on Strange Academy as well. And he always finds
yeah.
himself kind of doing like these a little bit of the younger books, and he just really shines when doing
He
that.
does, and so that's whether he's doing Impulse with me or whether he's doing,
Mm,
Miles Morales in his book or
mm.
whatever. He's always doing. He's at his best when he's working with young characters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, I have one last question for you. And this is a
I mean,
question, like I said, uh, we have a great crew at my local comic shop, BoomTube here in Sellington, Connecticut. And we chat. Sometimes we get into silly comic book debates.
mhm,
And I am a stark Superman defender to the T. I love my
yeah,
Superman. And every now and then, sometimes it gets brought up that it's like, why are we doing a Superman story where he's saving a cat out of the tree? That's not a good use of his powers. And
the
I
best
always
use of his powers.
thank
Yes,
you. And I always sit back and I said, you get the best Superman when he's being Clark. You get the best
right.
Superman at the street level. So I assume you're with me on this one.
I'm totally with you. Superman. I mean, it helps every once in a while just to remind people, readers, whatever, by when he saves a cat or when he does something, fairly quiet
Hmm.
that is not a Hulk level crisis. It's important that to people know that he is the world's mightiest human being, and yet he maintains a kind side to himself.
Mm,
It's the kindness that makes Superman, is the empathy that makes Superman who he is. Because without that, here's a character who can have anything, do anything, take anything. Right? He could be the most powerful, and he could rule the world if he wanted to.
mhm,
But his greatest superpower is his selflessness, is that he doesn't do this. He chooses not to use his powers for selfish reasons. And so of course he's going to help people. He's going to punch out Doomsday, but at the same time, if a cat's in a tree or whatever, I mean, there's got to be other examples, but if something quiet is happening like that, he's going to help too. It's not, it's fine. And, I don't know how macho you have to be, to believe that that's just dumb.
Hmm.
But it's people need help, whether it's a little girl who has a kitten in a tree, or whether it's a fireman who's falling out of a burning building. Doesn't
Hmm.
Superman doesn't get to choose. He doesn't get to choose who he helps. He's going to help everybody. So I feel sad for people who think that Superman saving a kitten out of a tree by the way, we've seen this happen about 4 times in 80 years. So it's not like he does it all the time. But if that's a bridge too far for you, I feel sorry for you, man. That's just sad.
There's two recent memories or just moments in recent
Mhm.
Superman comics that I always just kind of go back to. Shout out again, Philip Kenny Johnson, who did the recent run of Action Comics prior to you doing it, and we've had like this great run of Superman stories as of recently. But there's two. There's one where he's on top of a beam and he's talking to a construction worker who's a
Yeah,
reformed criminal, and they're just going back and forth, just saying, "How are you?"
yeah,
I'm having some issues with my kids still. And he's like, I understand that. I'm here for you. Like, he's always like for the best in people, even if it's like Metallo, who just was like losing his mind at the very moment. And then Superman, after he like, gets them settled down, he's like, well, what's wrong? He's like, they have my daughter. He's like, okay, well, let's
yeah,
save your daughter. Right.
exactly. Yeah, Superman is he will always look for a way to get something done. He does the
Mhm.
impossible. That's what he does. That's his job, is to
Mhm.
do impossible things. If he's not doing impossible things, then he's not Superman.
Mhm.
And it is he will always look for the best in people. He believes to his core that everyone from all the way down to Lex Luthor, there is something in him, there is some goodness in there somewhere that he can fan the flame. It's the reason why Brainiac is the only supervillain he's terrified of, because there's nothing. He knows there is no soul there to save. But for
Mhm.
everybody else, doesn't matter how evil they are, he believes that if somewhere down there, if he can just find it, there's enough goodness to be able to coax it out.
And as tough as it is, I still believe that with everyone for the most part. It's
I believe it less than I did a week ago.
I
Um, yeah,
yeah, it's tough, but I always look to Superman, to Nightwing, to these characters to just remind myself and be like, you know, I can do this. I can
yeah,
go forward. I can look
yeah,
ahead. And even the littlest, smallest acts of kindness could
yeah.
mean something, can mean everything to something.
Hmm.
You just never know.
Yeah.
So, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. If we are there any books that are coming out soon that we have not talked about?
You talk about World's Fight, Batman and Robin Year One.
Yes, Batman and Robin Year
That's
One.
the first issue just came out. The second issue comes out next week. It's with Chris Samnee, 12-issue miniseries about the earliest days of Batman and Robin learning to work together as a team, Dick Grayson and Robin. And boy, it just looks spectacular. I'm so happy with the way this book looks. And I'm really happy with the way it's coming together. If you like the Daredevil stuff, if you like the Black Widow stuff we did, or
Hmm.
the Captain America stuff, this is for you. So there's that. Still doing World's Finest with Adrian Gutierrez, who was doing Blue Beetle before this. Terrific artist. Still staying with World's Finest. And there's other things upcoming that we haven't talked about yet, but we can't talk about yet. But perhaps next time.
Perhaps next time. Perhaps next time. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you had a great Terrificon, by the way. It's one of
I
my
did. It was
favorite
it was an
conventions.
amazing show.
Yeah.
My complete un my complete endorsement, my complete unchecked, no reservations, complete endorsement of that show.
Come check it out here in Connecticut. It's Connecticut's number one comic convention. I say it's New England's, maybe the East Coast number one comic book convention. Comics come first, and you really feel that when you come into the show. So thank you for coming this year. It meant a lot seeing you and hearing you talk during some panels. It was great. Here on the channel, we do our weekly comic reviews as always, so go check those out. We have plenty of other stuff going on here at the Agents of Fandom, where we talk all about the movies, the shows, things that we're excited about. So like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And as always, like I say, go pick up some comics, but more importantly, go support your local comic shop. Go to
Yes.
localcomicshop.com, find your shop near you. Everyone goes into a shop for the first time. For me, when I went to my local shop for the first time, I was a little nervous. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to belong here. Everyone welcomes you with open arms, and we
Yes.
all just love talking about comics. And then you become friends with people, and then you become more friends outside of it. It's great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
localcomicshop.com, find your local shop, go pick up some comics, get a pull list, join the fun. Mark, again, thank you for taking the time.
You
Really
bet.
appreciate it. And once again, this is another episode of the Comic Corner.